Jeff is so popular after his Newsweek article this week that he couldn't come to Red and Black, but if he were here, he would say, like, share, subscribe. He brought Kara, but Kara's too popular, so she won't be here next week, but she will also tell you to like, share, subscribe. Right, Kara?
Like, share, subscribe.
Priscilla really means it too, but she's just going to sit there and look pretty because she can do that. And Dr. Metzler, he already told you your life's over if you don't like, share, subscribe last week. Those of you that aren't scared off, still do it anyway.
Like, share, subscribe. So you can get to meet the lovely Priscilla Ron in public. Have you seen her fashion? Like, share, subscribe to see more.
Reverse, subscribe, share, like.
Welcome to another episode of Red and Black, where your conservatism is not just the color that you used to. I'm Lenny McAllister, and I'm here to remind you all to make sure you thank your Uncle Joe and the BLM movement for that new federal holiday that you're celebrating on Monday, cooking out. And those of you that work for banks and the government or another type of entities, you're getting paid for free. Do not forget to do that. Priscilla and Dr. Metzler, do you think I made friends with that little reminder just now? Just want to put that out there as I sip on my swag mug.
How could we not be your friend? I mean, it's not politically correct not to be any of our friends during this holiday. So by matter of law now, everyone's our friend. So say what you want, especially on Juneteenth.
Yeah, and you know, the interesting thing about this, Dr. Metzler, is the fact that it's Juneteenth was signed into law by Joe Biden, was something that was in the Platinum Plan by Donald Trump. It's a holiday that people didn't even know about probably until the BLM movement. But I'm pretty certain that if you work for a bank, you work for the state government, local government, federal government, work for the post office, whatever, I don't think at a protest you're going to go to work and give up that holiday pay. I have to imagine.
No, of course you're not. I mean, it's, you know, just another freebie. It's manna from heaven, if you will. I do have to say, though, Walmart, what was that gaffe about Juneteenth food products that you did? That didn't go over well.
Yeah, that... You know, I don't think... Look, folks, I'm just gonna put it out there. I don't think we're quite at that point in time yet.
No.
Where getting your favorite African American a Juneteenth celebration card from Hallmark is really hitting the mark. Look, I celebrate Christmas, and I am just as black as they come, despite the Carlton jokes that you see on Twitter and online. But I don't even know if I still even want a Kwanzaa card, because I live those principles every day. I celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ, and those of you that have followed the history of Kwanzaa and understand how long it's been around and who started it and everything else might want to step away slowly. You can celebrate the principles all the time without celebrating Kwanzaa, but I digress with all that. I can digress with my love.
Man, have you seen the price of cards? I can either buy a Kwanzaa or Juneteenth card, or I can put a gallon of gas in my car. I think I'm going to put a gallon of gas in my car.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very interesting point, and let's start with that first, because as you well know, the Fed raised interest rates this past week, and inflation, as we've heard over the last couple of weeks, continue to hit historic marks. And it's to the point of time, and I'm going to start with you, Dr. Metzler, where you're almost looking at these news broadcasts and you're saying to yourself, is this a repeat? Am I watching my DVR? Because every time they do a report, they say this is the highest mark in 40 years. Well, we've been hearing that report on inflation now for the last several months in regard to it being the highest rate in 40 years. There doesn't seem to be an end in sight. And whether you look at this politically or you look at this culturally, geopolitically, or geoeconomically, this continues to go in a very, very wrong direction.
Well, it does. And look, the bottom line is, you know, President Biden is saying And a recession is not inevitable. Dude, we're in a recession, number one. Number two, as it relates to the Fed rate increase, keep in mind that's not going to be the last increase for the year. The Fed missed the mark on uh, really slowing down the economy and avoiding inflation. They absolutely missed the mark. Now they're trying to catch up. It is going to be severe. If you look at housing prices, for example, interest rates now are probably 6 to 8%, depending on where you live. That creates a significant problem for the economy and for growth. And so, yeah, it seems like we've heard this: the highest, the highest, the highest, the highest. How high can you get?
Well, the question then goes. So let me ask you this real quick, Dr. Metzler. When you talk about how high can you get, we're going to start seeing it impact job growth, which it hasn't done quite yet.
Right.
We're already seeing it impact staple goods. Everything from baby formula to tampons are being impacted as far as shortages because of the ongoing economy. It can get worse before it gets better. We can't have a housing bubble. We can't have other things and really face some ramifications, right?
Right. And it will, in fact, get worse. And of course, the supply chain issues have not been fixed. The port of California deluged. You've got so much backlog at the port. In addition to which, if we notice that everything that's happening, and people are saying, well, corporate profits have not taken a hit. No, they haven't taken a hit, because guess what they're doing? They're simply passing those costs onto us. So their profits are not going to take a hit for a very long time. And for the Bitcoin people, Bitcoin is way down. And as we look at this market, it is in fact going to get worse. And I don't understand what the Democratic messaging here is. Yeah, it's going to be okay. No, it's not. It's not okay, and it's not going to be okay. And the fact is, whether or not, and people are saying, well, you can't blame the president for gas price increases. Guess what? We blame whoever is in control. And right now, Democrats control all three branches of government. They're going to get the blame.
And Priscilla, when you look at that, you can always say, okay, I can't, and this is what the Biden administration is saying: we can't control a war in Ukraine. We can't control a pandemic. We can't control some of the other factors that are there. And there's some truth to it. Yeah, they're not the Russian leadership that prompted an invasion of Ukraine. They are also part of the extension of the Obama administration that didn't enforce red lines in Syria in 2012 and keep the Russians out of Syria 10 years ago. They're an extension of the Obama administration and policies that didn't do more about what was going on in Ukraine when they annexed the Crimea 7 years ago. Or 7 to 8 years ago. So you have all these things that they are indirectly, at the very least, part of. But even if you take all that aside, there's something to be said about being in leadership and proactively putting some things into motion. People continue to bring up that the XL pipeline was shut down with, there was a kibosh put on that the first week of the Biden administration. There was an anti-coal, anti-fossil fuel type of rhetoric coming out of the whole Democratic slate of presidential candidates in 2019 going into 2020. That has an impact on how people are going to deal with a Biden administration starting January 2021. So you have all these things coming together that proactive leadership could have fended off.
I couldn't have said it any better than both of you have said it. So we're looking at blame towards the president, rightfully so, because he is impacting the oil and gas industry by making us dependent on other foreign oil sources. We could be independent here in the United States, but there has been a consistent attack on the oil and gas industry. And where's the priority in this administration? to help everyday working Americans. Right now, we have the president begging Saudi Arabia for oil. He's trying to kick the can down the road, blame Putin for our inflation rises. That's inappropriate. And we're looking at other things that this administration is prioritizing right now when we see men dressing up as women and teaching kids to put dollar bills in their, scantily clothes. I mean, I just don't understand why that's a priority right now, other than safety on the streets. I don't understand why this administration won't prioritize affordable food. And when you're talking about everyday items that people need, he is not showing leadership. And this administration, the people who are representing the Biden administration can't even defend the things that Biden is saying in order to problem solve what's going on. And I don't think this is going to be a good thing for the Democrats, obviously, for this primary season, but also in this election, because we need to change. And I don't think the Democrats are able to fix what's going on.
Well, let's get into a little bit in regards to the proposed trip coming up over to Saudi Arabia, where President Biden is now going to be talking to the Saudis in regards to trying to prompt them to increase production. They're going to increase production, but they're not going to start doing that until July and August. We're not going to see the impact of that until much later in the summer. And that means we're going to likely see gas prices continue to do this back and forth of go down a little bit, go up even more, go down a little bit, go up even more. What do you think we can expect from that trip? One, from an effectiveness in regards to impacting the everyday American in a more positive way, but more so, every time you talk to the Saudis about oil production, you have this confluence of human rights, women's rights, Middle Eastern stability, and the geopolitical and economic consequences to all those other aforementioned issues.
Yeah, what do we have socially in alignment with a country like Saudi Arabia? I don't see. Well, here's what I think what might happen is we're going to go there and we're going to compromise so much more of who we are as America and the things that we stand for. And we're going to be beholden to the country of Saudi Arabia, just like we're beholden to China, just like we're beholden to Russia. And Biden's going to sell out Americans. And we see it getting worse and worse, just like Dr. Metzler said, it's going to get worse before it gets better. But I think we as Americans need to stand up to this administration, to our congressmen, and say we don't approve of the direction that this administration is going. We need our congressmen to stand up to the president and say, what are you doing? We need to look back at America, make America our priority, and become independent of other countries for our sources of energy.
Dr. Metzler, what say you? We're going over to Saudi Arabia, President Biden is, and that's always a risky endeavor. I mean, when we saw President Trump go over there, there seemed to be a little too much deference to the transactional aspect of the American-Saudi relationship, but no attention really paid as much to the human affairs aspect of it. Now it seems as though there's going to be a capitulation in order to get more oil from the Saudis, but then a different type of transactionalism from Biden, more out of almost desperation more than anything else because of the mess that we're in now and some of the lack of proactivism that we could have seen from America from an energy standpoint when the economy was going good 3 to 4 years ago.
Well, the president's going to go over there with hat in hand, essentially. He's going to grovel to the crown prince, by the way, who has been credibly accused of murder. The Saudis, as it relates to human rights, they have absolutely no concern for human rights, yet we claim to be a human rights leader. He's going to go over, he's going to grovel, he's going to beg, and he's going to get zero. He will essentially look like a fool on the world stage once again. In addition to which, it's not going to affect the average American's life in any significant way. And let's talk about ramping up production. Oftentimes people talk about ramping up production as if you just turn on the tap and the oil flows. No, there is a complicated process behind that. And by the time you actually see any kind of increase, number one, it's not going to be significant. It's going to be a very long time from now. And to the point that Priscilla made earlier about Putin's war and all of those kinds of things, yeah, he can't control the fact that there is a war. However, not just for him, but for the Congress of the United States, I want my $40 billion back from Ukraine. What is going on? We're giving them all this money. They're losing the war. And the president of Ukraine's out there asking for more money. Hello, we've got a deficit. We have shortages. And you're telling me about the war in Ukraine, the weapons? Oh, well, we're going to send more weapons. You haven't done it by now. What are you doing? And so from my perspective, the American people, as it relates to the midterms, will call and say, we want our country back.
Are we? But the question then comes. Let's go politically first. Are Republicans really positioned with solutions to win over the middle, or is it really just going to be a matter of another election where people are voting against a party? I mean, people forget there was not this rallying, clarion call for Donald Trump in 2016. It was just people could not stand Hillary Clinton, and Hillary Clinton was not a good presidential candidate. People continue to forget she lost to Barack Obama in 2008 for the same reasons, by and large, she lost to Donald Trump in 2016. So is it a matter of voting against a party where Republicans will likely take over, whether it's state houses, state senates, that they didn't have previously, or the House of Representatives and possibly the U.S. Senate? Or is it because Republicans are actually going to be able to come to the table with some things that people are going to say, thank goodness we have somebody that's going to be the adult in the room and get some solutions passed?
Well, here's the peril for Republicans. Once again, messaging. We keep saying, we don't want Biden in office. Biden is terrible. Okay, hello, Captain Obvious. We know that. It's not the issue. The question is, what are we going to do? And Republicans are not spending a significant amount of time articulating those solutions. That's a major part of the problem. Therein lies the rub for Republicans is, I am not sure what Republicans are going to do. However, I do think people are angry enough to say anybody but the current administration. I think there will be changes. I'm not convinced that the House is going to go, the Senate rather, is going to go to the Republicans. With the baby mama drama that Herschel Walker has, with all of those other things that are going on. In fact, if you look at Wisconsin, for example, I continue to say Democrats are going to have, or in a good position to have a pickup. Mandela Barnes in Wisconsin for the Senate, also Fetterman in Pennsylvania, and I am not convinced at all that Herschel Walker is going to win against Reverend Warnock. I'm just not.
So let's go to first Fetterman. The latest poll that came out, Priscilla, has John Fetterman with a 9-point lead over Dr. Oz, which I've talked to people that I interact with on a regular basis, and people have told me, do you think that's a shock? And I'm like, no, because people like John Fetterman here, and Dr. Oz really doesn't live in Pennsylvania. I digress about that. But let's go to Herschel Walker, which, would it be a joke to say that, the day after on a Juneteenth, that saying something about Father's Day and then talking about Herschel Walker probably is either a bad idea or really well-placed well wishes? I don't know. Priscilla, this seems to be the problem that we always end up having with certain Republicans, which is you can't wag your finger at a community and then be guilty of the same thing or worse. I mean, there was once a congressman that would just berate somebody out of Florida and then got caught with an 8-ball. You can't be the moral authority and they get busted by the feds while they're trying to do a drug bust on somebody else. They catch you with an 8-ball.
I mean, this is the debacle of politics, what we're seeing in candidates. It's like, who's going to outdo who? It's the crime Olympics sometimes in our politics. And are we surprised anymore? But hey, it's the year of the Black Republican. So maybe I'm more optimistic than Dr. Metzler, and I'm behind Herschel Walker all the way. He's going to catch the ball and he's going to take it home to the end zone and he's going to bring it home for all of us. And we're rooting for him. Okay. So, but to answer your question,
did you get done reading through all your football analogies?
Yes, yes.
Okay, you were just checking off the list. He's going to tote the ball, bing, across the goal line, bing, he's going to touch down new policies, ding, he's going to be our MVP. Ding, congratulations, you listed all 4 of them down.
Yes, yes. But to answer your question, I think it is a little bit of both. Yeah, we need to do a better job at messaging. It seems like the Democrats outspend us at least 2 to 1, if not more. And they are playing dirty politics in certain markets, like in Colorado, where they're trying to pick our Republican candidates in the primary. And what I say to that is, if you want to pick Republican candidates, then you should become a Republican. Otherwise, stay out of our primaries. But I digress. We do need to do a much better job. Yes. And watch Red and Black. Like, share, subscribe, so that you can know exactly what's going on in the community. But I think that we need to work behind our candidates to help them understand how to message in our communities about solutions. We have the solutions. We've said this time and time again. It's not enough to bash the Democrats. That's easy to do. They give us content every single day. Watch the White House press briefings, and it's a kabuki theater. And when you hear the press secretary constantly trying to defend the feckless comments of the president of the United States, who continues to go around the world and make us look weaker and weaker, it's an embarrassment. There's enough content, but you're right.
But let's drill it down a little bit, even on the content, Priscilla, before I let you continue. At the state level, at the local level, stuff that's going on in the schools. You're seeing a repetition of people that have been in control, and at the local and state level, sometimes it's been going on for decades where they've been in control, and a failure to see progress and empowering reform. You can have as much reform as you like, but empowering reform is something different. And there are communities that just haven't seen it in quite some time, and thus the need to reconsider who they're voting for.
Yeah, we need to build better trust as conservatives, as Republicans, in communities where we haven't necessarily been visible. I think that's one of our faults. That is a good thing about us as conservatives and Republicans, that we're really independently minded. We're about people pulling themselves up and doing good, and there's opportunity for everybody. But the reality is, we need to go into these communities where they haven't had the same equitable access to the things that we say that they should have access to, and message to them how to live a better life, how to access prosperity, how to improve their education. We can't be afraid as Republicans to go into Black and Hispanic communities. Now, we're doing a better job of that. We're seeing victories, just like in Texas. Man, that's amazing, to flip a Democrat area, House district, to Republican that hasn't been Republican for 100 years. That's amazing. So I see a move that people, the right person with the right message to say, when is enough enough? Haven't you had enough of Democrat poor leadership in our community?
It's ironic that you would say that, because Dr. Metzler, I'm going to go to you with this. We continue to have the wrong messengers and the wrong messages. I mean, for example, haven't you had enough? We heard somebody say that in 2016. What do you got to lose? That was seen as being a good message by Republicans, and even some people in the middle were like, at least it's not as bad as what they're used to saying. When you start thinking about the Herschel Walkers and the Candace Owenses of the world, where you're like, okay, the NAACP is putting people on the Democratic plantation after she won a lawsuit years earlier, or Herschel Walker going on there and berating Black fathers having kids out of wedlock and don't care about their kids, this, that, and the other. And then this stuff comes out, not proactively being in front of it. Because look, I'm not here to be the moral authority of anybody or judge anybody, but you can't wag your finger at people and then do the same thing or act like you're above the fray and you're talking down to people. I think, with our messaging, Dr. Metzler, it's not just that we don't message it right, it's we message it very poorly in a highly condescending way, which only alienates people that we should be helping. And we're probably, in many instances, with many policies, the best people to help.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think it's this notion. Okay, so you've got the RNC neighborhood centers, but then you've got a whole other fight between the grassroots activists in those communities, who are on the conservative side, and the RNC centers as to how that's done. Look, Republicans have been saying for all this time, come over to the Republican Party. I will tell you, for someone who's been in this party for a very long period of time, if people of color, and Black people in particular, come over to the party in significant numbers, we are not ready to do the things that we say that we're going to do. From a leadership perspective, building a bench, understanding the social issues, we're just not ready for that as a party. So, and there are a number of people who say, I'm not even gonna, I'm not even going to target Black votes because they don't vote for me anyway. They don't vote for you because they don't believe you have anything to offer. So they would either vote Democratic or stay home. Neither one is good. Look, from the standpoint of, I think it's important to have two functioning parties, a Democratic Party and a Republican Party, but they have to function and stop the sniping and the name calling and the gutter politics. That's not helpful.
So basically, I put up Jeff's article, and Jeff's not here this week. He's at Faith and Freedom down in Nashville. Plus, he's so famous after this Newsweek article, he decided he was just going to take a vacation week and not tell anybody. But that's what you got to do when you deal with prima donna superstars like Jeff Charles. So read the article on Newsweek. He knows I'm only playing. You all know I'm only playing. But Dr. Metzler, what you're saying to me is having a number of Republicans running for office is not necessarily the same as revolutionizing the GOP. And Jeff's making the case that more people being involved has something to say about it. The lieutenant governor now in Maryland and in Virginia are Black Republicans. People miss that. And you got, purple Virginia, but also rather blue Maryland, both with Black Republican lieutenant governors. And of course, Michael Steele was there upwards of 20 years ago. And you're seeing a movement in one regard, but there's also something to be said about what positions of power when it comes to policy advocacy, in regards to direction, in regards to messaging, are you truly seeing from the political right, even as you're seeing more Herschel Walkers and John Jameses in front of the television cameras on Fox News as Republican candidates?
Well, yeah, but the issue is here, it is not revolutionizing the GOP at all. And here's why I say that. From an infrastructure perspective, when you get into a party, the question becomes, how does the party support you once you have won that seat? What's the bench going to look like? What about national committee men, national committee women, all of those things? Those things are not conversations that are being held at the highest levels. And so we have to be very clear about that. And in addition to which, you can be both Black Republican and conservative and not wag your finger at the Black community who you think lives in a constant state of deficit. And that is what Republicans have not mastered and are not thinking about in any significant way.
We have a candidate up in Buffalo that's running for Congress that is has been endorsed by Representative Stefanik, that has a history of saying very damaging things to the Black community. And before this latest thing where they said, it's a shame that Democrats keep Black people hungry and poor, that's why they vote for Democrats. Before that, had made a comment about, it'd be nice if they sent back former First Lady Michelle Obama. She would go back to being a man after they leave office. And yeah, true story, Priscilla. And, she can, go back to her cave and take up with some gorilla and yada, 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 and all this other stuff. And this is somebody in Republican leadership has given an endorsement to because he can self-fund and he has the right friends. And people seem to think that having more Herschel Walkers in the forefront, who, by the way, you're going to have to ask yourself, what policy position, what level of interest or cultural pursuit qualifies him to have a cleared field for the U.S. Senate in Georgia, other than being, a running back on a team formerly owned by Donald Trump in a league that Donald Trump drove out of business. Not that I'm being critical, but you got to ask the question, when you have Black Republicans up front, where is the cachet in the Black community? Because that's not the same as just having Black Republicans or Black conservatives more out front. I mean, there's a lot of, 20 years ago, Priscilla, you didn't see a lot of Black conservatives on Fox News. It was Larry Elder and every now and then Walter Williams and a few others. That was it. You don't have that problem anymore on Fox News. You have a lot of people from your David Webbs. And I remember when David Webb first started on Fox News, he's been there for almost 15 years now.
Yeah.
So that's not the problem. But the bridge seems to go to nowhere. How do you build the bridge to a stable other side that involves getting real Black voters? Look, Sonny Johnson lights up Sirius XM radio every week with people that actually seem to follow her. That's different than what you're usually seeing in the Black community when it comes to Black conservatives.
No, you're saying everything I'm thinking as far as what we need to do in order to.
So I'm putting down what you're. I'm putting down what you're taking up. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure, I'm brother. I have to.
Look, it's Father's Day weekend. If you're not going to get a couple of dad jokes in, what's the bother?
Yeah, you guys get elevated respect, today, especially. I will take a second to say thank you for being present Black fathers. I was raised by a present Black father who is still married to my mother, and he served our nation. And that is the privilege that I have, which is why I love the both of you so, so much, because you are walking the walk, and it makes such a difference in the lives of children, but also as, for girl dads, man, for me to have a father who is amazing, it makes all the difference. So I just want to elevate y'all.
Thank you.
Oh, well, hold on. I'm going to call you out for a second. Let's be real, everybody out there. She likes Dr. Metzler more than she likes me. Is thanking us both, but she's begrudgingly doing it. You notice, by the way, she started saying all this stuff when Dr. Metzler was on the screen. The moment I came on there, she had steered it right out to something else. So I will take this, I guess, but I'm not letting you off the hook.
But that's not true, Lenny. I love you just as much equally. Okay?
See what I mean?
But I think what's going to change is people who have been elevated, like you, Lenny, like Dr. Metzler, mentoring and helping to build the bench of really solid candidates who are running for offices that are appropriate for them to run, like where they're a good fit. Mm-hmm. The problem is here in America, we have created this monster in politics of, do you have a big name recognition? The bigger your name recognition, the easier it is for you. Do you have wealth? Who are your friends? You kind of alluded to that earlier. And when you have actors, athletes, TV personalities that have established years and years of those things, it's easy to use them to compete against the other side to run, because it takes so much time, money, and energy to take a quote unquote no name candidate who might be a great candidate with great ideas and try to compete against someone who has those things. And so we have created this monster in politics where we're putting people in positions that do not necessarily have legislative experience and policymaking experience, and do not have a track record of bringing people together and problem solving in neighborhoods. Like a lot of our candidates don't have those traits. So somehow we need to find those perfect candidates that have experience in leadership and governance and legislation, but also have the ability to grow their name ID, have the right message, and raise money. So like, but we're it's going to take this group here, you guys, to find those candidates and start building them up.
Well, it's an interesting point. I know that we got other current events that we can talk about. I want to dive into this a little bit more, though, because Dr. Metzler, part of that goes back to what you said, intentionality, right? You got to want to do that. If you're, I've told people this all the time. I've told people this when I've given speeches and things along those lines. I've said, look, you can either be trendy or you can be historic. Mm-hmm. What do you want to do? Because being historic does not mean that you're going to trend on Twitter. It doesn't mean you're going to always say the popular thing. It doesn't mean that your clips are going to be run on the nightly news. And it doesn't mean you may have 50,000 people at your rallies. But, do you want to be the type of person that's a hashtag or has somebody name a high school after you? Mm-hmm. They're different types of people. People don't realize that. Hashtags make a lot of money, sell swag, make money, have big booking fees when they give speeches. And now oftentimes they don't have to say anything except the same exact speech in 50 different states to make a whole lot of money. Getting a high school named after you usually means you gave your life for something worthwhile. It means you did something really, really big. And it means that you did something that lived long past your lifetime. And it seems as though when it comes to building up a bench, and the Democrats do it, but not as much as the Republicans, we're more after the trendy people. We got a congresswoman in Colorado that was trendy, that's now in Congress, that we're now finding out maybe she trended for the wrong reasons. We have some other people in Congress that have been Republicans and Democrats too, that were trendy, that we're now realizing, those aren't necessarily the people we want writing laws. By the way, do they know how to write a law? By the way, do they even know what a pen and paper is? So these are things that we have to, I know that was a little snarkiness, I apologize, folks. But we have to get past that desire to be popular and well-liked just to be able to do something that's meaningful. And speaking of well-liked people, I got a surprise for you. Ta-da! Is joining us just in time too, Kira, because I was talking about well-liked people, and we were already talking about how Priscilla really doesn't like me that much, and Dr. Metzler's the favorite. When it comes to politics, there are issues in regards to how we build up a bench. And sometimes we go after trendy people versus qualified people in order to build up the bench and really build some relationships with non-traditional constituencies.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you guys know I'm running for school board here. And one of the things that I'm facing now is not just, we're not just talking about the Democrats and the progressive pushback, but we're also talking about pushback from our own party. Mm-hmm. People who are saying, well, you know what? You are kind of the outsider. You're the new person. You haven't been operating within all of the structure of this. And we're going to go get kind of the usual suspects. And I'm kind of having to deal with that, like facing the idea that it's not always the same people that we need to win. Sometimes you need to take a risk. And I don't know if there's ever been a better time to take a risk than now. I mean, our opponents are hobbled. And it's sort of time for that, that extra oomph to, I mean, I hate to sound like very aggressive, but kind of put him down and salt the earth behind him. I mean, I hate to sound aggressive first thing in the morning, but that is, and also just with conservative media too. We struggle with this at Red State a lot, right? The idea of getting the people who are at the top to take chances on new voices. Everybody wants a sure thing, but sometimes you have to build a sure thing, I'll tell you guys the story. You'll laugh. When I first joined the school board race, one of my the people that I was talking to for sponsorship and for endorsements, she said, "Oh, I just love what you do in conservative media. Can you get Candace Owens out here?" I was like,
Really?
I swear. I was like, I don't think so. No. So that's what we're up against. We're just up against the idea that there's like one way to do things.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's really important to, as Lenny was saying, expand the bench now more than ever, because now when we go into the future, once the Democrats pull themselves back together, and they will, everything's cyclical, we need to be able to have a deep, deep bench. So we never have to go back to the starting point that we were at.
Did you, the starting point, the turning point, the swag?
Can you see that?
Look at that. I don't have any swag.
It's coming. It's coming.
Okay.
Well, here's my swag, Juneteenth swag.
All right.
The church.
So, Kara, we had talked about this earlier. The whole, the missed opportunities, even with Juneteenth. There are some conservatives that are pushing back on Juneteenth because Biden signed it into law without remembering that it was in the Platinum Plan during the 2020 campaign for Trump.
Yeah.
And it's a Republican holiday because of the Emancipation Proclamation and all this other rigmarole that comes with this that we continuously seem to miss opportunities for, particularly in a midterm year that should be good for the Republican side of the aisle in November.
I don't get it. I was just thinking about this last night, you guys, because I was watching like Twitter and the kind of the usual suspects were, I'm not going to celebrate Juneteenth. Somebody tweeted out a lot of bad words about the fact that their office was giving them the day off for Juneteenth. And I know. And he was like, this is, and I'm like, and this is a conservative. And I'm like, I don't understand what the problem is. I think I do understand what the problem is.
Hold on. I'm going to say it because I've been that one for 15 years. It says this. We know what the problem is. Some of you all have allowed the conservative movement to be hijacked. As I said in 2009, that you can put cyanide and wrap it with chocolate. You can't call it candy. And some of these people have this conservatism that has nothing to do with conservative values. They couldn't name a free market principle if it smacked them in the forehead. This is an excuse to be able to rail against other Americans because they look different or act different. And to the Candace Owens point, then they take these, proxies to be able to further their positions because it makes them feel good. And then they get to say, look, she's black. I'm not racist. Look at Candace. Whatever. Look, the bottom line is, we as conservatives, and I'm going to say this, and Priscilla, I'm going to go to you, even though you don't like me as much as these other two. What I'm going to go to you with is, at some point in time as a conservative movement, if we're truly about saving the country and getting things back on track, those that have bastardized our conservatism and our Republican Party must be shown the door, and we must lock the door. Or we must take the house that we're in that is full of roaches and rodents and burn down the house and build a mansion that all Americans can count on as a foundation.
It sounds like you're wanting an insurrection.
Ooh.
So here's how I feel about the Juneteenth federal holiday. It was, I think it was a circumstance.
Whoa. I'm not going to let you go to Juneteenth. Put that statement down. I'm going to pick up what you're laying down. We've gone over that little axiom earlier, Kira. I'm going to pick up what you're laying down, but I'm going to ask that question, and I'm going to answer it and say, yes, a political insurrection that's going to course correct American politics off of the track that it's been on for the last 25 years. I'll even go as far back as Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky all the way through 2000. January 11th, a brief blip of unity, and then all the dysfunction that we had in the 2000s, and then the Great Recession, and then 2016, and then 2020. So yes, I'm asking for a political insurrection, but one that we can be proud of, that's honorable, not the type of stuff we've been seeing over the last 10 years. So then I'm going to ask you to answer that, since you asked me that question. You put that rhetorical question out there.
I was going to say there's a lot of content there. Like, I'm trying to figure out what the question was, but they, you know, I'm very logical. I got to have like one question at a time.
I want to hear Priscilla's Juneteenth thoughts.
Yeah.
Because I think something interesting was just about to come out of her mouth. I would hear it.
That's for you guys.
Everybody likes those three better than me. Go ahead, Priscilla.
Okay, so with Juneteenth, I feel like that was the Biden administration's way to try to placate the Black community. So in that respect, I feel like if all we've been hearing from the Democrats is elections, voter laws, Black people can't vote, yada, yada, yada. If they really cared about the Black vote, my question is, why didn't they do something that would actually encourage more Black people to vote? They didn't really offer our community anything by making Juneteenth a celebration. Not a single person, not a single Black person that I've spoken to is like, oh, okay, you know, we have Juneteenth as a federal holiday. Now we're going to all of a sudden start voting for Democrats again. No, they should have, in my opinion, made the first Tuesday in November a federal holiday. Take every inhibition off the table, every excuse off the table for Black people not to be able to vote. And so I think it's just one of their games that the Democrats play with our community time and time again. We have a lot of Black folks just sitting out voting because they're so tired, they're fatigued. I'm in chat rooms, I'm talking to Black folks just like you are, and they're like, you know what? I am so sick and tired of the Democrat Party. I'm not ready to become a Republican. I'm not ready to vote for Republicans, but I am so sick and tired of the Democrat Party. I'm probably just going to sit this out. And so I was very annoyed personally by Juneteenth becoming a federal holiday. Not that I don't appreciate what Juneteenth means. And but a lot of Black folk outside of Texas was like, what's Juneteenth? This is the problem. Our own community didn't know what Juneteenth was. And, you know, then all this fighting about like, when was our real independence? And, you know, this competition against 4th of July and Juneteenth and all of this stuff, like it kicks up all of this dust around the conversation. But at the end of the day, what did this new law do to help a single Black person in America? I say nothing. That's why I don't like it.
Okay, let me come back on that. So I suspect that this is what you were going to say. This is actually what I was going to say, Priscilla, before Lenny brought it all the way to conservatives just have too much racism. But I think that part of the pushback is because conservatives feel like this was just decoration and it didn't really mean anything. And also it felt like, well, this is sort of like a poke in your eye. We did this, conservatives, not you. Basically, I agree with Priscilla that there was no real thought behind it. I don't believe there were any really good intentions behind it. That being said, it's a holiday now. So I don't think it behooves conservatives to look at it as something that is aggressively meant to humiliate or shame them because they didn't do it or they don't celebrate it. Everything that Lenny said about the holiday is true still. It's a Republican holiday. It celebrates freedom, and it's an excuse to like cook out. We love to do all these things as Americans, and especially as conservative Americans. So instead of being sour about it, what we should do is just totally reclaim it from the Democrats and be like, this is another day to celebrate freedom. This is why we need to celebrate freedom from the government. This is why it's not good to let government make decisions for our bodily autonomy, for our bodies, because what we get is what we had before Juneteenth. You know, and I think that there is a way for the Republican Party to make this a huge celebration and a great part of our legacy as Republicans, and then dare the Democrats to tell us that we can't.
But see, this is
allow us to do that.
Yeah.
Sorry, so I just have a question, Dr. Messler. Will the Black community allow us as Republicans to reclaim this holiday? That's my question.
Well, I don't think so at this point. But see, here's what I was talking about earlier with messaging and Republicans missing the message. I said during the Trump administration, guys, this is the perfect opportunity to reclaim Juneteenth now. Yeah, who cares? And now The Democrats have done it. We had that opportunity. It was in the Platinum Plan. And so if we're talking about a major outreach, I think we could have, at that point, taken the ball and ran with it. Now, once again, we're trying to play catch up. But, and that's why I think it's so important for Republicans to not just talk about wanting to bring people over to the party, but let's be clear, let's do those things. Can you imagine if Republicans had done that, the kind of messaging, the kind of support we would have gotten?
And here's the messaging that you could have had. And by the way, Kira, I heard what you said about the conservative movement having too many racists in it. I don't think everybody that's conservative is racist, because look, as a Black Republican Catholic, if I thought that, I'd be the loneliest man in America. So no, I don't think that. Do I think that we've allowed the conservative movement to tolerate and allow certain people to hijack our messaging and our imaging? Yes, we have. We can have that another conversation. It's been going on for far too long. But to Dr. Metzler's point, and even to your point, the perfect marriage of being able to steal this from the Democrats, use it as a Republican, and then remind people where things go and say, look, one of the last major things that Republicans did at the end of the Civil War was in June of 1865, the last slaves were told of the Emancipation Proclamation. Unfortunately, it also served as the beginning of 100 years of Democratic rule, where they instituted Jim Crow and terrorized Americans politically and otherwise throughout the United States of America, particularly in places such as Texas and the American South. You could literally bridge politically a Republican win in 100 years. Everybody wants to talk about 6 years of Donald Trump, 7 years of Donald Trump influencing the Republican Party. That's a conversation to be had. That's literally 16 times less of an influence than the Democrats had for policies that literally terrorized Americans, which one would be one heck of a history lesson. And number two, would also remind people that American politics is an ebb and flow if you get involved. To Dr. Metzler's point, and to you two ladies' points as well, it's a big missed opportunity that we could have taken advantage of. But now that the holiday's here, maybe we just take advantage of it while we can.
Yeah.
I mean, we could, but I think we're all agreeing on this call that that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But there's just too many people that are already dug in.
Yeah.
And I find that unfortunate. I think this is a great opportunity for messaging. I actually do agree with Priscilla. I do agree about the intentions of it, and they weren't. I mean, there's all kinds of things they couldn't done. It was optics, but then this is one of the biggest problems with the federal Republican Party. They don't understand messaging. And if something's going, I'm a big fan of dealing with the world the way that it is, not the way that you wish it could be. This is the world. The Democrats won in 2020, and this was the world that we were given. But we don't have to pretend that then we just don't have any power. You know, the Republican history is behind the power of the messaging. So, but I do think it's more attractive to the public base, or, you know, I'll say the social media base, when a Black Republican comes out and says, well, I'm just refuse to celebrate.
Right.
This. And it's one thing to say, it's one thing to say what Priscilla carefully said and thoughtfully said. It's another thing to say, I refuse to celebrate this, and it's a disgusting holiday, and it's a worthless holiday. I think that is completely unnecessary and unhelpful. And it does give comfort to people who really just didn't want any kind of change, you know, and so they're like, well, look at this Black person, she doesn't want change. I've celebrated Juneteenth. I've lived in communities that celebrate Juneteenth. Juneteenth was not a surprise to me. Yeah. And I thought it would have been fun that we would all get another day off, but we have to make everything so angsty. We could have just rolled with this and really won this battle. It's the messaging, just that the federal Republican Party are a bunch of beltway, stick in the mud.
But it's interesting, and I'll finish up with this before we get out of here. For everybody that doesn't want to celebrate the federal holiday of Juneteenth, I better not smell your grills. I'm talking to conservatives. I better not. I'm talking to free market principle conservatives. I better not smell your grills firing up on Labor Day. Because Labor Day, if you look at the labor movement, has caused the angst in everything from the schools that you can't stand right now to the economy that got trampled in the 70s and some of the union issues you're still dealing with today, to the promises that Joe Biden made to the AFL-CIO earlier this week. Do not fire up your grills on Labor Day, or the receipts are here on Red and Black. I'm just going to put it out there.
Okay.
You're true to your political principles.
You made a great point, and now you're my new favorite.
That was so easy.
Ding, ding, ding.
Kira Davis, you joined us last, so I'm going to ask you first.
I'm so sorry. Thank
What
you.
you got
By
going
the
on
way,
this week?
thank you guys for letting me cut in and enjoy some of this conversation.
Thank you.
What you got going on this week, real quick?
I'm still running for school board, as always. You can go to kiraforschoolboard.org. This week, let's see. I think I'm on Newsmax this week, so just tune into my Twitter account at Real Kira Davis, and then don't forget all of the other great stuff that we have going on here on the Red State channel. Brandon Morris does Red State Live 3 times a week, and he's always careful to make sure that he's talking about our show too. We love how the channel is growing. I want to thank all of our subscribers and supporters. And if you like this show, please drop a note for Lenny and Priscilla and Doc and Jeff, and maybe even me when I pop in a while. Drop a note in the comments. Let them know what you think, and let them know if you want more of this. Your comments really help. So thank you guys for including me even for a little bit today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Priscilla. What you got going on this week?
You know, we've got primaries coming up on the 28th in Colorado. So just going around to as many events to talk about our candidates and turn out the vote. We're just getting out the vote the next week and a half.
These people are so famous. The first one's on Newsmax. The second one's married to a Grammy Award-winning producer. What famous hoi-polloi thing are you doing this week, Dr. Metzger, to embarrass me?
Well,
about
this
myself?
week, there's a major conference with the International Monetary Fund on human rights, and I'm working on a human rights paper for that.
See, Lenny, what are you doing with your life?
You set yourself up, Lenny, for that one.
I know.
I'm gonna refill my red and black mug and sip some tea and just reflect upon what I'm not going to be doing this upcoming.
Wait a minute, before you close out, Lenny, let me say this: a very happy Father's Day to you, 2 wonderful, amazing Black fathers. My episode of Just Listen to Yourself this week is a interview with my father-in-law, who's one of the best fathers I know, and we just talk about the importance of dads, but also especially Black fathers who are as loving and guiding and kind as you guys are. You guys are a great example for our entire community and for Americans. So thank you for being wonderful dads, and I hope you have a great Father's Day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kieran. For all of you out there, enjoy your Juneteenth, whether you want to or not. Continue to like, share, and subscribe to us here on the Red State YouTube channel. Continue to watch Red and Black. Continue to make America better. You know we're walking with you arm in arm, side and side, and you know we love you and this country. We'll see you next week. TCNGB. Take care and God bless.
Take care.
Peace.